Like, oh, that what would be the process and like,
For 2 Pints, most episodes have 3 stories, so sort of a big A story, and the A story might be the story of the whole series. So there'd be an entire story arc that we're following with the A story, or that might be the B story, which is slightly less at the front of the show. It's still equally as important. And the C story would be something where if we were doing an emotionally heavy A story, the C story would be something very, very silly, just for the balance. So that was the process of actually writing the scripts and coming up with ideas for what we wanted to do was a case of going, right, episode 1 starts here, usually at the end of the last series, which may have ended on a cliffhanger. It usually did, which was I was like, "Oh, I hope they commission us again. Maybe they will if if I leave it on a cliffhanger." I don't think they cared. So we'd pick up where we left off last series, most of the time, and and then say there was, uh, 8 episodes, you'd say, "Where do we want to be at the end of episode 8?" And then, if if I had other writers around, um, I would want the series to look like a wave.
okay,
So you would have big emotional resonance there and sort of around 3 and then slightly bigger at the end to end it on. And if we had other people writing episodes, if they was tried to lean into their strengths. So if they were sort of they loved classic, Roy Clarkian or One Foot in the Grave kind of things, which is slightly more surreal, I guess. But if they liked comedy, sitcoms, then they would get an episode that had the storylines within it that was suitable for their mode of writing. Um, and I if a writer was super, new around and, um, was still working on the craft, they might get a slightly less emotionally resonant episode and maybe a more visually, um, fun thing to do. Um, but that's roughly the process.
so in the writers, you would put certain things to based on how that person works.
Yeah. Oh, we would, allocate certain scripts to writers to try and play to their strengths. So say, so I'd be stood on the whiteboard as it was back then with the marker pen. And if you had a writer who suddenly and they were making suggestions for an episode, and if you saw that they got excited about that particular storyline, then more often than not they would have that episode to write because it looked like they were kind of passionate about it and wanted to do it, or they had lots of ideas and for jokes and story and plot. But they were thoroughly plotted before the scripts were allocated to any writers. And like I say, there was like an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot within the 24-ish minutes.